My name is Dan. I'm the Customer Learning and Development Consultant here at RightCapital, and I'm excited to be here today for this RightCapital Academy webinar focused on modeling annuities in RightCapital. So we're going to be covering all things annuities today, starting with data entry, getting those annuities off the page, so to speak, and into RightCapital. So we're going to walk through those data entry inputs together to make sure that we're all comfortable with that process. We're also going to take some time to look at a few settings and assumptions that might be impacting annuities within your plan projections. Things like when RMDs will be distributed from qualified annuities within the cash flows, and how we can potentially distribute RMDs from an IRA account first to help those annuities really maximize growth potential before paying out. We'll also be diving into the retirement analysis module to take a look at modeling future annuity purchases within a client's proposed plan. So for those clients that maybe don't have annuities today, but could stand to potentially benefit from purchasing an annuity down the road, the goal there is to help you all feel confident modeling that out accurately within a plan, and then being able to show the clients, the before and after to really highlight the value of that annuity in terms of stable income, downside risk protection, and all that comes with that. Lastly, we'll wrap things up today by pivoting into the advisor portal and looking over how you can create annuity models, which is a relatively new feature that can really save you a lot of time in terms of data entry if you find yourself entering the same annuity products over and over into your client plans. So that's our agenda for today. As I switch screens over to my RightCapital login here, I do want to remind everyone that these webinars are recorded. So, I will show you closer to the end of the presentation today where you can find the recording of this webinar after this presentation ends. And then I want to remind everyone as well, especially those of you that might be newer to RightCapital, that these webinars are also interactive. And I want to hear from you. So if you have any questions at all as we're making our way through the presentation today, please don't hesitate to write in. You should find a questions field in the Zoom control panel on your screen. So like I said, feel free to write in with any questions. I'll be sticking around until the end of the presentation today to answer as many questions as I can, until the top of the hour, rather, to answer as many questions as I can. So that being said, here we are within our case study for today. We're looking at a joint plan today for Allie and Richard Jones. Let's take a quick look at the profile blueprint area just to get everyone briefly acquainted with these clients. So generally speaking, we're working with a couple who have a current net worth a little over $2 million as of today. We can see that Allie and Richard are both in their early to mid 50s here, and they've got a son, Michael, age 13. And we can see a breakdown of their assets and liabilities here, broken out by owner in this net worth chart. So we can see they have been accumulating a good amount of savings, lots of tax deferred assets here, as well as primary home, joint mortgage, and so on. So that's just a quick overview of who we're working with here today. And with that in mind, let's start talking more about annuities, starting with data entry. So for those clients who have existing annuities, those can be entered right here in the profile section of the client plan. And there are actually two different ways to enter annuities in RightCapital. Annuities can be entered either within the net worth section of the profile as assets, or they can be entered within the income section as income cards. So we're going to look at both methods here. We're also going to touch on the use cases for each and when you might want to use one method or the other. So first things first, we're going to be starting things off by looking at entering an annuity as an income stream in the profile income section. And I want to preface this quickly by saying that we care a lot about flexibility here at RightCapital. Of course, there's a time and place for inputting really detailed data into a plan and getting really granular cash flow output. But at the same time, there may also be situations where you might need to enter something as quickly and effortlessly as possible, or maybe where the information that you have to work on is limited. So, for many of the data entry inputs in RightCapital, we essentially give you two options, a quick and easy option that requires a little bit less information up front, and then a more detailed option with a bit more depth. And the reason I say this now is because this is also true when it comes to entering annuities in RightCapital. There's the quick and easy way to enter annuities in a plan, and there's the more detailed way that requires more information to be entered. And these can both be incredibly valuable depending on your needs. And in a lot of ways, it really kind of boils down to the type of client that you're working with as well. So, that being said, let's say that maybe Allie and Rick here are brand new prospects, right? And maybe we don't have all of their information, but they've told you that they plan to retire, maybe at age 65, and at that point they plan to file for Social Security, and they also have an annuity that's going to start paying out at a certain dollar amount. So maybe, if that's all the information you have, that might be an example of a situation where you'll want to enter the annuity as an income stream here in the profile income section. So speaking generally, this is the quick and easy method. So let's model this out. To add an annuity as an income stream, all we need to do is click the Add Income button in the upper right, and then choose Annuity from the drop-down here. And that's going to open this data entry drawer for us where we can enter some of the basic details of this income stream. So we can specify the annual dollar amount here at the top right. We can select who the owner of the annuity is, whether that's the client, co-client, or joint. We can specify the timing in terms of the income start date, when we want that income stream to begin within the plan, whether that's a specific calendar year, whether that's a specific client age, or maybe the client's year of retirement. We can specify, in addition to the start date of that income stream, the duration of that income stream. So is that going to be a lifetime payment, throughout the duration of that client's life? If you're using the life only option, you'll have the ability to enter a survivor percentage, what the surviving co-client would receive if the client receiving this annuity were to pass away first within the projections. There's also an option for a certain only annuity income stream. So in this case, no survivor percentage. We can instead enter the guaranteed period, how long that's going to be paying out for. And then there's also an option for certain slash life. This one will reflect the longer of the two. So the longer of the guaranteed period or that client's lifetime. So this option lets you enter both the guaranteed period and a survivor percentage, just in case one happens or the other. So I mentioned that this is the quick and easy option, but even so, we do allow you to get a little bit more detailed here for those clients that might have non-qualified annuities. We can, for those non-qualified annuities, we can choose to enter the cost basis, which is the total amount paid into the annuity by the clients, and the exclusion ratio, being the percentage of that income that won't be taxable until the cost basis is depleted. So these are optional parameters. You can skip these if you're working with a qualified annuity, but we give you the flexibility there for those non-qualified annuities. I skipped over these before, but you can also choose to specify any annual increase on that annuity income stream, whether that's a customized increase of whatever percentage you enter here, or simply general inflation. And you can choose whether that's compound or simple interest. So, at the end of the day here, even without any other details like the annuity value, the benefit base, roll-up rate, etc., we can still sketch up the income amount and duration, and we can see that reflected within the plan projections. And just like all of our other data entry inputs, this will impact our probability of success in the retirement analysis, and we'll be able to track this paying out within the cash flow projections. So let's take a quick look. In the retirement cash flows area, we'll be able to see this paying out within the summary table. So we'll navigate to retirement, cash flows, summary, and then if we click into the income inflows column on the far left here, now that we've entered that annuity income stream, we'll see that kicking in. I believe I entered Allie's year of retirement here for that income start date, so we can see that starting to pay out in that year. And then with that annual increase, we can see that lasting for the duration of Allie's life based on those inputs. So that's the first method of entering annuities, definitely the quicker of the two methods. Next on the agenda here, we're going to be taking a look at the other method of entering existing annuities into a client's profile. And this next method is definitely the more detailed of the two methods. So while it's helpful to know how you can quickly model these annuity income streams, if you're working with an existing client or or prospects that can provide all the details of their annuity, there can be a lot of value to building out that annuity in greater detail. And this is something that can be done in the net worth section of the profile. So before we dive in here, I do want to make sure I mention for those of you that might be a bit newer to RightCapital, you can, of course, enter this information within the profile section of an existing client plan like we're doing here today. But if you've just created a new client plan and you're inputting their information for the first time, Both of these methods can also be done during the initial data entry process for a new household. It might look a little bit different, but you will see a data entry step labeled income, where you can add those annuity income cards. And you'll also see a step labeled net worth, where you can enter annuities as assets like we're about to do here. I did see a question come in about this, so I also want to make sure I mention that, when it comes to entering annuities as assets here in the net worth, there are certain advisor level integrations that are able to pull in annuities and automatically feed all of that data into the net worth section here. And that can certainly save you a lot of time in terms of data entry. So again, for those of you that might be newer, integrations allow you to connect platforms that you may already utilize in your practice, things like account aggregators and asset custodians. And by setting up those integrations, you can pull existing account data into a client's RightCapital plan. So if you have access to one or more of those integrations that allow you to do that, you'll be able to click the link account button here and you'll see a list of all of your integrations. Definitely take advantage of that feature if you have access. And if you're new to RightCapital and haven't set up those integrations yet, know that you can always reach out to our support team. They're very well versed in all of our integrations, and they can definitely help you, getting those integrations set up. That being said, even for those of you that do have integrations available, you can always enter annuities manually within a client plan as well. And entering annuities as assets here in the net worth can be a little nuanced compared to what we just looked at in the income section. So we're going to dedicate the next 10 minutes or so here to walking through this data entry process together to make sure everyone's comfortable with all of these inputs. So first things first, to add our annuity to the net worth here, we can click the Add Account button in the upper right, and we'll want to choose the investment option here. So this is going to add just a blank slate investment account to the client's plan. And then the first step of this process is to choose the account type. And there are 3 different annuity options here in the account type list. And if you don't feel like scrolling through this entire list, you can actually type the word annuity here and it will filter by those account types, which can be very helpful. So, we can choose a qualified annuity funded with pre-tax dollars from a qualified account, a non-qualified annuity funded with after-tax dollars from something like a taxable brokerage account, and a Roth annuity funded with Roth assets. So, what we see is, of course, different tax treatment for these different types of annuities, but the data entry for each of these is mostly identical. So for today's example, we'll be entering a qualified annuity. And once you choose one of these annuity options here in the accounts type field, you'll see the data entry here change a little bit. These fields will adapt to reflect the fact that this investment account is an annuity, and you'll find yourself with some new options. Firstly, to specify the annuity type, and this is where you can choose whether this is a variable annuity that we're entering with a specific asset allocation, a fixed annuity that's going to grow by a crediting rate, a specific rate of return each year, an indexed annuity that might be tied to a specific market index with a with a cap, floor, and interest rate spread. So these are going to be your fixed indexed annuities, and then we have indexed variable annuities or our buffer annuities. So we are going to review each of these because the data entry will change slightly depending on the option you choose. Variable annuities are probably the most straightforward here. With this option selected, if you're familiar with entering other types of investment accounts within RightCapital, these are entered exactly the same way. And for those of you that maybe are a bit newer, there are 2 different entry methods when it comes to entering investment accounts into a client's plan. And once again, we do sort of see a quick and easy option as well as a more detailed option here. So if we use the enter total balance option, we can simply enter the total balance, the current value of that annuity, whatever that might be. And then we can choose to customize the asset allocation of that annuity as well. And when we customize these allocations, we can either manually plug in percentages for each asset class to get us to 100%. Or if it's easier, we can also use a model portfolio. So if you switch to the model portfolio option at the top here, you can simply choose a model as the basis for that annuity. So maybe this is allocated according to a 60-40 split, a moderate portfolio. We can use that as the basis for this variable annuities asset allocation. Perfect. So when it comes to the other option here, which would be to enter holdings and asset classes, this is the more detailed option here. This is where instead of entering the total balance, we can instead add specific holdings to the account. So this option might make more sense for something like a variable annuity. If you happen to have that information from the client, you can enter, the ticker symbols here for the specific holdings within that annuity. You can specify the quantity. The price will automatically feed into the system based on yesterday's closing values. And ultimately, the value of that annuity is going to be determined based on all of the holdings within the annuity. So that's the second option. Probably will take you a little bit longer in terms of upfront data entry, but you get the added benefit of being able to, see all of the different holdings within that account. And when it comes to the asset allocation, that's going to be based on the holdings in the account as well. So you can, if you'd like, you can skip that step. You can rest easy knowing that those allocations for each holding will be pulled into the system, and that annuity will be allocated accordingly. So for our next annuity type, for fixed annuities, we have some slightly different data entry here. Rather than using the asset allocation to determine the growth, we can instead enter a crediting rate, for that annual growth within the projections. So you can still choose to set an asset allocation for fixed annuities. So, if you'd like, you can enter something here just for demonstrative purposes, but this is strictly illustrative when it comes to fixed annuities. So for the most part, the asset allocation won't be referenced by the future-looking projections. It's instead going to look to the crediting rate that you enter in terms of the annual growth on that annuity. Our next two annuity types, fixed indexed and indexed variable, we're going to see some additional data entry fields introduced here. So I do want to quickly review these as well. So for our fixed indexed annuities, you will have the ability to enter both a cap and a floor. The cap, of course, being the maximum amount of growth that can be credited to the annuity in a given year, regardless of how well that index performs, and the floor being the minimum amount of growth, which in my personal experience helping advisors enter these kinds of annuities tends to be 0% a lot of the time. So maybe this client has an annuity that's tied to a market index with a 6% cap and a 0% floor. The annual growth on this annuity within the projections will always fall somewhere within that range. And you also have the ability, of course, to input an interest rate spread and a participation rate, excuse me. And both of these will reduce growth on that annuity as well. So if the spread is 2%, let's say, and the index returns 6% in a given year, that's going to get reduced down to 4% due to that spread. And with the participation rate, if it's anything less than 100%, it will also reduce growth in a similar way. So just to keep it simple here, if the index returns 10% and the participation rate is, say, 90%, that'll drop to 9% returns instead of 10. So a couple extra inputs required here for our indexed annuities, but hopefully still straightforward for the most part, especially if the client is able to provide you with the actual documentation detailing this information for their specific annuity. Last but not least, we have our indexed variable annuities, and these are our buffer annuities. So again, we can enter a cap here, we can enter a participation rate as well, and rather than a floor, we can instead enter a buffer here for our downside protection. And unlike the floor, which is a minimum amount of growth, the buffer represents the amount of loss that will be absorbed in years with down markets. So if we have an annuity with, let's say, a 10% buffer, and the index this is tied to sees a 15% loss in a certain year, 10% of that will be negated, and we'll instead see only a 5% loss applied to this annuity within the plan. And for all these other annuity types, in addition to these annuity-specific inputs, we also want to make sure to enter, of course, the total balance or the current value of the annuity, and then specify the asset allocation as well. All right, so that pretty much covers it for the first two steps of the data entry process here. Step one being the account type, whether this is a qualified, non-qualified, or Roth annuity, and step two being the annuity type, whether that's variable, fixed, or indexed. And regardless of the options that you choose, for those first two steps, The third step of this process is always going to be the distributions field here on the right side. More specifically, this is what will determine the income that we see from the annuity within the plan, both in terms of the amount and the timing of that. So to put that a little more simply, how is this annuity going to pay out within the future? Before diving in here, I do want to mention quickly, even if you are linking annuities using an advisor level integration, like I mentioned earlier, it will feed in information like, the annuity type, possibly the holdings within that annuity as well, the current value of the annuity. But in many cases, you may still need to choose a distribution strategy and enter the details here. So this is an important step and something that's definitely worth double checking, even if you are linking those annuities. So when it comes to distributions, there's three different options to choose from here. The first one of these is regular withdrawals. And with this option in place, Right Capital will essentially treat this annuity just like it would, just like it would treat any other type of investment account within the plan. So what this means is, the annuity will grow each year within the projections based on, the crediting rate, or for our variable annuity here, the asset allocation that's entered. And again, just like other investment accounts, you can specify withdrawals from this annuity by adding income distribution cards to the plan and manually telling the system how much to distribute and when. So I'm going to quickly name this annuity just to make our life a little bit easier here. We'll call this Allie's annuity for now. I'm going to click save and just quickly highlight in the profile income section, how these income distribution cards can be added. So I'm also going to delete this annuity income stream we added earlier, just so that doesn't skew our output. But within the profile income area here, to manually distribute from annuities set to regular withdrawals, you can click the Add Income button in the upper right, and then add an income distribution card. And if you're unfamiliar with this card, in a basic sense, what this is doing is allowing us to say, I want to pull, X amount of dollars, so maybe $10,000 per year from this specific bucket of accounts. So we entered a qualified annuity just now, so we'd select, Allie's qualified annuity, and then we can set the duration, the timing of that distribution as well. So maybe we want this to start distributing in 2040 and last until the end of Allie's plan. That's just one example of, how you can manually distribute from an annuity using an income distribution card here. And that's the way that you would manually distribute from other types of investments in Right Capital as well. So we're not going to be diving too much more deeply into income distribution cards in today's presentation. But I will mention, of course, like everything else in Right Capital, if you do want a little more information on those, you can always take a look at our Help Center. And we've got plenty of resources that are dedicated to those income distribution cards that will help you out in terms of data entry there. All right, let's pop back into our annuity here. I'm going to delete this one I added before the presentation just to keep things simple for today. So our other two options when it comes to annuity distributions are going to require a little bit more data entry here within the net worth. So these two options include annuitization and lifetime income. So of course, we know that there are going to be clients who plan to annuitize their annuities and surrender the value of that annuity in exchange for an income payout, as well as clients who have annuities with a lifetime income rider. And that's what these other two strategies are going to allow us to model. And when we choose one of these options, new data entry fields will appear here that allow us to specify the details. So for something like annuitization, we'll be able to specify the details in terms of timing, as well as the income amount that we'll see within the plan. And if some of these inputs look a little familiar to you, that's because there is quite a bit of overlap here with what we saw in the profile income section when we entered that annuity income stream. So first things first, we can determine the income start date here, when we want that payout to begin within the plan. We can specify whether that income stream is going to be a percentage of the annuity value or a specific dollar amount. So you've got a little bit of flexibility there. Again, we can choose to enter an annual increase if we'd like, whether that's general inflation or a customized increase. And ultimately, we have the flexibility to choose the duration as well, whether that's single or joint, and whether that's certain only, life only, or certain/life, just like we saw in that annuity income card. So I'm going to save this quickly and pivot back into the retirement cash flows just so we can take a look at what an annuity like this looks like within a plan. So just like before, we're going to pivot back into the retirement cash flows and we'll be able to see a few new things now that we've modeled this not just as an income stream, but as an asset within the plan. So in the retirement cash flows, we're still going to see what we saw before in the cash flows summary tab in terms of the income inflow in the annuities column. We'll see once that income stream begins, we'll see that paying out, according to the amount and duration that we've entered. But unlike the income card, we also are able to track the value of that annuity within the plan as well. So that's the main benefit of adding the annuity as an asset as opposed to as simply a quick and easy income card. So we can actually see, the growth on that annuity as we project that out into the future. And in a case like this, because we've chosen annuitization as our distribution option, we can actually see when that annuity is annuitized within the plan, and we can see that balance eliminated in that year. And then the income stream, kicks in at the beginning of the following year. So we can track all of that information here, which can be really helpful in demonstrating to clients, sort of the mechanics of how these annuities work behind the scenes within the plan. All right. So to wrap things up here in terms of data entry, let's take a look over our last distribution option, which is lifetime income. A lot of the inputs here will be the same as what we saw when annuitizing in terms of the income start date, the income type and annual increase. But of course, there are some key differences here as well. Once you lock in lifetime income as the distribution method, the first thing you'll notice, so if we click save here, the first thing you'll notice is that in addition to the total balance, you'll also be able to enter the benefit base. So if the benefit base is, different than the annuity value, and hopefully that benefit base would be higher than the annuity value, you can enter that here. And the lifetime income that's calculated will look to the benefit base rather than the annuity value. So that's the first thing here, the benefit base. Back within the distributions data entry drawer, there's a couple new fields as well. We'll be able to specify the roll-up rate. That's what the guaranteed yearly increase on the benefit base will be within the projections. We can specify whether that's compounding or simple interest, and when that roll-up rate will, stop being factored into the plan, the roll-up stop year. So we can specify all of those details related to the roll-up. We can then specify, again, the income start date, which typically occurs after that roll-up stops. And then we have all the same options here in terms of the income type, the income percentage. We can also enter that as an annual dollar amount if we'd like, the annual increase. And then there's a couple new options here for lifetime income in terms of any fees associated with that annuity, whether those are calculated based on the annuity value or based on the benefit base. So you'll be able to, account for some of those fees here as well. So if we save this information and then take another quick look at our cash flows, we'll see some differences when using lifetime income compared to annuitization. So first things first, within the cash flows accounts tab, we see the value of the annuity accumulating. And then, once the income starts paying out, rather than, surrendering the value of that annuity in exchange for that income stream, we see that annuity value start to deplete, as the annuity pays out. And it's not happening in this instance, but in many instances, you'll see the point where that annuity value is completely eliminated, within the projections. And at that point, it can be really beneficial to then pivot into the summary tab and show clients, again, in this income inflows column, that even once the value of that annuity is fully depleted, with the lifetime income rider, the income stream will continue to pay out, throughout the duration of that client's life. So you're able to, take a look at both of those things in conjunction with one another and show the clients, how the value of the annuity and the income stream might start and stop at different times. All right. So that does cover it for the data entry portion of this presentation, and that was by far the most technical we're going to get today. So it should be smooth sailing from here on out. Just to quickly recap what we've covered so far before moving on, the quick and easy method of entering annuities is in the profile income section here, adding those annuities as income streams. The more detailed method of adding annuities would be to add the annuity as an asset, as an investment account within the plan, which is going to allow us to, choose whether that's a qualified, non-qualified, or Roth annuity, specify the annuity type and enter the other information, and then ultimately choose the distribution option and specify the details of the eventual payout. So I know that was a lot of information we just covered. So for those of you that may want to, rewatch the recording of this webinar back in the future, I do want to remind everyone again that this is recorded. We will be posting the recording by the end of the day today. So you'll be able to find this recording in our help center if and when you need it. And of course, our help center in and of itself is an incredibly valuable resource as well when it comes to annuities. So if you need a refresher on any of the annuity data entry that we just covered, there is actually a data entry article on annuities that you can find in our help center pretty easily. And this is going to detail all of the same information I just covered, the different annuity types and the different data entry inputs for each annuity type, each distribution option, and a breakdown of all of the data entry fields for each option. So again, if you need a refresher, don't hesitate to take a look at our help center here. All right, so next on the agenda for today, I want to take a quick minute or two to highlight some of the settings and assumptions that might impact annuities within your plans. And there's one setting in particular that we're going to be looking at here, but I do want to start by saying that in general, your asset return assumptions are going to play an important role when it comes to growth for something like, a variable annuity, depending on the holdings or model portfolio being used as the basis for the asset allocation. So as always, your return assumptions are something to be mindful of, and you can always double check and adjust those assumptions at the client level here within the gear icon, settings, return assumptions tab. So you can take a look at what assumptions you're using at a global level. You can choose to customize those assumptions at the client specific level, so you always have that flexibility. I do want to also mention quickly just something related to those indexed annuities. By default, RightCapital does default to using the large blend, asset class, which is the average between large growth and large value when it comes to projecting those indexed annuities out into the future. So that is the default. So definitely something to be mindful of. So your large growth and large value assumptions here will play a more important role when it comes to indexed, fixed indexed and indexed variable annuities in particular. In addition to return assumptions, there is also a specific methodology setting that can potentially have a big impact when it comes to RMDs for qualified annuities. And within the methodology tab here, that setting is going to be on the left-hand column here towards the bottom. Take RMD from IRA account first. What this essentially allows you to do is delay taking withdrawals from qualified annuities with a lifetime income guarantee, which would be any qualified annuities set up with the lifetime income distribution option. And it's going to satisfy that annuity's RMD requirement by pulling from the client's IRA accounts instead. And the purpose of doing this is to delay those RMDs, allow that annuity more time to grow, and hopefully provide a higher guaranteed income amount once that eventually pays out. So for clients who meet the criteria of having both a qualified annuity and a traditional IRA within their plan, you can check this box here and then click Save to make that happen automatically within the plan, which can certainly be a valuable strategy. Perfect. So the next thing I want to cover here, everyone, is how you can propose an annuity purchase within a financial plan. So something I want to make sure I clarify at this point is that everything we've looked at in the profile up until now, as it's related to modeling annuities, both as an income card and in the net worth here as an asset, this is going to be for clients who, have existing annuities, the annuities that those clients already own. And by building those out in the profile area here, we're factoring those annuities into the client's current balance sheet, as well as the current plan within the retirement analysis module. But of course, being able to demonstrate to a client that maybe doesn't have an annuity, the potential benefits of purchasing an annuity, either now or in the future, can be incredibly valuable. And truthfully, the data entry process for proposed annuities is almost exactly the same as what we just walked through here for existing annuities. The main difference is really going to be the location where these are entered within the software. So I'm going to exclude this annuity for now, just so it doesn't impact our projections. And then I'm going to pivot into the retirement analysis module. So quick overview for those of you who might be new to RightCapital. The retirement analysis area is really your playground for modeling different what if scenarios, proposing specific recommendations, and seeing the impact of those items on a client's plan. Comparing their current plan based on the profile inputs to the proposed plan using your changes that you've dialed in within the action items here. So just like other things, annuities are also something that we're able to add to a proposed plan within this area. And we can do that by scrolling down to our action items at the bottom here, clicking the edit button in the lower right corner, and then clicking the add new items button here. And the first option you'll see in this menu is an option to add an annuity. And that'll open a data entry drawer on the right-hand side of your screen. You can specify the owner who's going to be purchasing this annuity. You can specify the purchase year, whether we want this annuity purchase to happen immediately or at some point in the future. And then we can choose which account within the plan that we want to use to fund the annuity. So, we can take a look at all of the assets in our plan here and ultimately choose, maybe we want to, roll over assets from Allie's 401k into an annuity. So we can choose Allie's 401k as, the account here. Other than that, the data entry here is pretty much the same as what we looked at in the profile. We can specify the annuity type, whether that's variable, fixed, indexed, and so on. We'll find the same data entry inputs for each of these annuity types. We can specify the distribution strategy in terms of regular withdrawals, annuitization, or lifetime income. And ultimately, we can also specify the value and some of the other details there. So we can enter our value here. There's an extra field here that isn't in the net worth for an account value bonus, which is additional value on top of what we're pulling out of the account we've chosen to purchase the annuity. So maybe there's a 5% bonus being applied to that annuity value. And then, because we've selected lifetime income, we can also specify our benefit base here as well. One thing that you won't find here is the ability to specify whether it's qualified, non-qualified, or Roth. And the reason for that is, because it depends on the account type that you choose to fund the annuity. So because I've chosen Allie's 401k here, qualified account, this would be a qualified annuity. But if I were to choose, their joint taxable account, for instance, this would be non-qualified. If I were to choose Rick's Roth IRA, it would be a Roth annuity. So the annuity type in that sense relates to the type of account you're using to fund the annuity. Ultimately, at the end of the day here, we can click save after entering this information. I will go ahead and name this as well, just so we can tell what this is that we've added. So I'll call this Allie's annuity. That's going to be added to our action items here within the retirement analysis. And at this point, we can take a look at the impact that that has on the plan. Ideally, that would result in an increase in probability of success, median ending asset value, and we can compare and contrast all that information. So what we're looking at here, just to reiterate within the current plan, is this client's plan without the annuity, solely based on the information entered into the profile area. And then our proposed plan is now going to be factoring in that annuity purchase that we just added here. And you can toggle this on and off within the projections for your proposed plan as well. Of course, the Monte Carlo analysis here, the probability of success can be valuable, but there are other charts and visuals that can really showcase the value of annuities in particular in some of the other tabs here in the retirement analysis. So I do want to showcase some of these other key visuals that might be helpful for you when you're trying to highlight the value of these annuity proposals. Starting with the comparisons tab. First and foremost, something to consider here is that even if the annuity we're proposing doesn't seem to be increasing our ending assets within the baseline scenario, it's important to remember that this baseline scenario is a straight line linear growth projection. So the market performance being simulated in this scenario is a direct reflection of your asset return assumptions for each and every year of the projections. But a lot of the time, these annuities can really shine within a plan, when it comes to the stable income that they provide and the downside protection that they're able to provide in less favorable market conditions. And we can simulate that here using different return scenarios. So maybe instead of historical assumptions, which is what I'm using, maybe we want to see how these plans stack up against one another if we assume something like a flat 6% rate of return. And suddenly we see some differences here in terms of ending assets as a result of that annuity proposal. There are other scenarios to choose from here. Maybe a bad decade followed by slow growth. It does look like this plan isn't quite making it to the end with that scenario in place, but ultimately, you can take a look at that annuity proposal in the context of these different return scenarios with different sequences of return. And that can be really valuable when it comes to highlighting the value of those proposed annuities. I will mention that some of these return scenarios are default scenarios that are built into every RightCapital account, and some of these are custom return scenarios that I've built myself within my account. So in just a minute here, when we pivot into the advisor portal to look at annuity models, I'll be sure to also show you all where you can build out custom return scenarios as well. To wrap things up here, I do also want to showcase a specific chart in the retirement details tab here that tends to be popular among advisors when it comes to annuity proposals. And that's going to be the income sources chart here. So this chart, just to give you all a brief description, is looking at the client's year of retirement through to the end of their plan, and we can see all of the various income sources that contribute to fulfilling their retirement income need. So we can see their Social Security, pensions, savings withdrawals, and you'll also notice that we can see our annuity contributing to that here. So maybe just for this example, I'll increase the income being received from this annuity just so we can see that visually a bit more clearly here. All right, so click Save. Hopefully now that's a little more obvious. We can see now our annuity in dark green here, in addition to their Social Security and savings withdrawals, helping to fund their retirement income need here each and every year. That's also going to contribute to their stable income percentage within the plan. So again, sometimes the value of these annuities shines through a bit more when it comes to taking a look at these scenarios in terms of income stability, especially in down market scenarios, which you can also implement in this tab of the retirement analysis. So again, you can toggle these annuities on and off to show clients the before and after, the increase in stable income as a result of the annuity proposal. So we can see it jumping from 34% rather to 37% income stability in the baseline projection. And then we can see how that compares to some of the other return scenarios here with some less favorable market conditions. So lots of flexibility here to take a look at these annuity proposals within the context of different scenarios to analyze different benefits and different information here, and ultimately, help answer those client questions and showcase that value. All right, so the last thing I want to mention here in the retirement analysis area before we pivot into the advisor portal here is the way that you can change the proposed asset allocation for variable annuities in particular, separate from the rest of the client's investments. So you may have noticed, as we entered our proposed variable annuity here in the retirement analysis, the one thing it was lacking was the asset allocation piece. And by default, the allocation of that annuity will be aligned with the asset allocation of the client's proposed plan as a whole, whether that's their current allocation or a specific model portfolio. But there is actually an additional action item that you can add here to propose a specific annuity allocation for those variable annuities. And you can do this again by clicking the Edit button in the lower right here. And then in the Strategies column on the right-hand side, you'll find an option for the annuity allocation. And once this gets added here, we'll have the ability to set an annuity allocation, maybe a moderate portfolio that differs from the overall investment strategy for the rest of the client's assets, maybe a more aggressive strategy. And ultimately, we can click refresh in the lower right, see the impact of that, and compare that to our current plan. All right, So we are nearing the end of the presentation here, folks. We have just one more thing to touch on for today before transitioning into our Q&A, and that's going to be annuity models. So you may have noticed throughout the presentation today that both when entering existing annuities in the net worth, as well as when proposing annuities here in the retirement section, that within the data entry drawer for those annuities, there is a copy from model button that you can click here. And for those of you who maybe find yourself with maybe with multiple clients who have the same annuity products, or maybe you have a number of specific annuities that you like to recommend or model as what if scenarios, you have the opportunity to build those out in your advisor portal, as annuity models. And this will allow you to do the data entry for those annuities just once. And then you can save that model to your account. And then when it comes to entering that into a client plan, you can simply pull in the values from the model. So this can be a really helpful way to save you some time if you work with annuities on a regular basis. And it's a great way to, put a bow on our presentation for today. So back here in the retirement, or back here in the advisor portal rather, we can find those annuity models within the models tab at the top of the page here, specifically within the annuities section of the models tab. So what we find in this area is the ability to add new annuity models by clicking add annuity model in the upper left. Just like entering annuities within our plans, we can specify the annuity type, whether that's variable, fixed, indexed, and we can specify all the details for each annuity type. And then ultimately, we can also add one or more distribution options for that annuity model as well. And the data entry here, again, is exactly the same as what we walked through in the plan. So we can add a lifetime income distribution option for this model. Maybe we also want to add, let me name this so I can click save. And maybe we also want to add an annuitization option for this model. So we have some options to choose from. So I'll click save. We've now got two distribution options here for this annuity model. And we can, call this new indexed annuity. Click the blue check mark to save all that information. And now that this has been saved within the plan here, back within our client plan, if we take another look at Allie and Richard, in both the profile net worth area and the retirement analysis area when entering annuities, rather than having to enter all the details manually for that annuity, you will be able to copy values in from one of those models you've created. So here we have that new indexed annuity model we just created, and we can choose which distribution model we'd like to use for this client. So ultimately, it's going to pull in all that information and copy that into the plan. And all you'll need to do then is enter the value, the benefit base, and of course, the timing and account that we're going to be using to fund that annuity. Perfect. Back in the annuity section here, before transitioning into the Q&A, folks, I do want to quickly just mention, this models tab is also where you can create those custom return scenarios. And each of these tabs within the models area does have a link to our help center under the add model button in the upper left. So if you're looking for more details on annuity models, you can read about those here. If you're looking for more on custom return scenarios, you can take a look at that information here. So lots of really valuable information in our help center here related to all of these different model types and annuities in general.